Hello and welcome to another episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. We are here on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel, and thank you for tuning in here on your lunch break or whenever you are watching this here on Wednesday, February 7th. We'll give a couple minutes here for some people to come join us in the chat if you are watching live. If you are not watching live, please make sure you are subscribed to us here at the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel. That's where we host these Wednesday live episodes every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. You can also find the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on Spotify or wherever you do listen to your podcast episodes for Monday and Friday episodes of that podcast as well. You can find all of my written work on KentuckySportsRadio.com, part of the On3 Sports Network. And then, as always, you can find all of that content, the written work, the podcast, this YouTube show, all of that you can find on my Twitter at BRamseyKSR. So make sure you're following along there. A lot of gambling picks there as well for every night of college basketball. So, coming out of last night, obviously the biggest story in college basketball on Tuesday evening, was North Carolina's home loss to Clemson. We will get into that. We will touch a little bit on Oklahoma's win over BYU. We'll talk a little bit about Iowa State's win over Texas. We'll get into some of the Mountain West results from last night. That race is crazy. Up at the top, there's a couple Big Ten results from last night I want to touch on as well. Yes, we'll talk a little bit about Kentucky and their win against Vanderbilt from last evening, and then we'll talk a little bit about tonight's card. Probably give out a couple of the gambling picks I have locked in for tonight. But let's start right there with that North Carolina-Clemson game from last night. Clemson came out of the gate in this one and honestly looked like the better team early on. North Carolina actually never led in this game. It was wire to wire for Coach Brad Barnell and the Tigers. Didn't see that coming. I was on North Carolina -6.5 last night. I thought, and honestly, I still think this. It's going to be the overwhelming theme of this show, about every show I do, everything I write. Like, this college basketball season has told you more than anything else. If you have one takeaway from college basketball this year, it is do not be prisoner of the moment. These bad losses aren't necessarily as bad of losses as what you may think they are. This isn't 2015. This isn't 1995. Like, this isn't your older brother or your dad or your grandpa's college basketball. Like, this is a new age where parity is the name of the game, and losing at home to Clemson isn't. It's not the unacceptable North Carolina loss that you would think of it as being, even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago. Like, PJ Hall is really, really good. He's an all ACC level player. There were times this year where he was thought to be an All-American, and he plays like an All-American last night, 25 points, 9 rebounds. Joseph Girard is a really good guard for Clemson. Like, these guys are good players, and it's not necessarily shocking that they can knock off a team like North Carolina. And North Carolina came all the way back. It was 70-70 with, I don't know, maybe, 4 minutes to go in the game. As a 6.5 better, I didn't necessarily think they were going to cover the 6.5, probably, but I did think at that point that North Carolina was probably going to get it done, and I thought they were going to win the game after, I think, their largest deficit. I think they were down 16 at one point late in the first half. So to come all the way back, I was like, okay, they're at home, they're the better team, they're going to win this game. But credit to Clemson, they won it down the stretch yet again. They had won it earlier, they kind of had to win it again, and they did that. So Clemson's still, they're only 5-6 in the ACC, and quite frankly, the ACC is not very good. But to that point of parity, to that point of teams taking losses, like North Carolina, this is a team that a week ago we all thought that they were in that upper echelon of probably Connecticut, Purdue, and North Carolina. Like, that was the three that we thought, okay, yeah, there's parity. Yeah, anybody can beat anybody on a given night, but those are the three teams that are kind of a head above the rest, so to speak. I'm not so sure that's not still the case. Now, the results would tell you that it maybe is a two-man race now of Connecticut and Purdue out among the others, because North Carolina's lost 2 of their last 3 now. Kansas, I think, is 3-3 in their last 6 games. So even these teams that are perennial top 10 teams that were certainly considered Final Four national championship contenders this season, they're having stretches where they struggle. And that doesn't mean that they like it. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that we were wrong when we thought they were really good. It doesn't mean that they can't still win a national championship. It's just part of the landscape of college basketball now where these teams are going to take some losses like that. But you don't want to sit here and talk about it's a really good win for Clemson. And this team, I mean, there's a reason why. I mean, what was Clemson? Clemson was 9-0 and I think 11-1 going into ACC play. So I mean, this is a team that had success this year. They won at Alabama this year. They beat South Carolina, who seems like they're one of the best teams in college basketball at this point. They beat Boise State, who's one of the teams at the top of the Mountain West that we'll talk about in a little bit. They won on a neutral floor against TCU, a team that's doing some things in the Big 12. So like Clemson has good wins. It's just gotten hard for them in conference play, but credit to them for getting it done last night. Oklahoma took care of business against BYU. I don't want to sound like a hater. I probably talk about BYU way too much on my shows, but part of it's just because Ken Palm and all these metrics, BYU was the darling of the non-conference schedule. And they've already probably won as many Big 12 games as I would have expected them to win coming into the year. They're 4-5 now, but pump the brakes a little bit on the Cougars. They're now under 500 in the Big 12. Somebody has to lose these Big 12 games. The Big 12 is a gauntlet, but they're going to be the ones that lose a lot of the games. Like they're just not as good as a lot of the other teams, and I think we're starting to see that. They lost by 16 points against Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's good. I bet on Oklahoma last night, but I think it was a 1.5 point spread. Like that's crazy. It's at Oklahoma. Oklahoma is 10 points better than BYU, and I think they proved that last night with that result. Sticking in the Big 12, Iowa State, one of the other big games, they went into the Moody Center and beat Texas 70-65. I almost took the Longhorns in that one. I liked the spot with them being at home. They're such a hard team to figure out. They've gone on the road and beat TCU just on Saturday. They've gone on the road and beat Oklahoma. They've gone on the road and beat Cincinnati. I saw somebody tweet it last night. I'll try to kind of quickly do it here, but they're better on the road than they are at home in the Big 12. That is just weird. But credit to Iowa State. They are now 6-3 in the Big 12. They've won 4 of their last 5 games. They've only lost on the road. Their losses are to Oklahoma, BYU, and Baylor, all on the road. So that their team is going to continue to compete towards the top of the Big 12. Just elite defensively, the Cyclones are. I guess rounding out the Big 12, you had Baylor taking care of business against Texas Tech. That was a top 25 matchup last night. Continue to really like this Baylor offense. Ray J. Dennis had 21 points, 5 assists last night. Yves Missy, one of the stories of the freshman class. He's been excellent in the front court for the Bears. 17 points, 7 rebounds. He continues to play his way up NBA draft boards. Not the best game from Jacoby Walter last night, but you get 14 out of Jaden Nunn. There's a lot of depth to the offensive talent of this Baylor team. They don't need the same guys to do it every night. That's part of what makes them so dangerous. They are now 6-3 in the Big 12 as well. Quickly in the Big 10, Minnesota, they moved to 18-3, or no, they're 18-3 against the spread this year. That's what I wanted to touch on. They're 15-7 overall. They're 6-5 in Big 10 play, or 18-3-1, whatever they are. They're the best team against the spread in college basketball. Took care of business last night at home against a Michigan State squad that still just can't really figure out. They're 6-6 now in the Big 10. I was talking to one of my friends who's a Spartans fan, and it has to be frustrating if you are Tom Izzo, or certainly if you're a fan of Michigan State, because it's starting to feel like a little bit of a lost season, not just because of the fact that they were considered a top 10 team going into the season. They were a Final Four contender going into the season, and here you are, 14-9, 6-6, outside of the top 25 on the bubble, probably at best of the NCAA tournament. That makes it a lost season in a lot of ways, but also like they had a very highly regarded freshman class. Now, it's terrible what happened to Jeremy Fears. I mean, the guy got shot. Like, that's scary. That's sad. That's terrible for him. And hopefully he makes a complete recovery and can still go on to have a great college career, because he was one of the guys that was really contributing some for this group. But like Xavier Booker, Colin Carr, the other guys next to Jeremy Fears that were lauded as highly touted recruits. I mean, Michigan State had one of the top recruiting classes in college basketball. And now with Jeremy Fears obviously not playing at all, and those other two guys don't really play any meaningful minutes, and when they do, they don't contribute. So like, not only are you losing the games this year, but you're not even developing your the freshmen don't play in the games. So I don't know. Like, you kind of hate to say it, but Tom Izzo might kind of be losing this year and maybe even next year, because you're just not getting any development out of these guys. The other game, I watched a decent amount of this one, including the ending, even as the Kentucky game was going on. But IU comes from 18 down early in the second half to win in Columbus. They take down Ohio State 76-73. It was one where you never thought the Hoosiers really had a chance. Again, this was 49-31 with 17:39 to go in the game. And then IU just kind of kept chipping away. That they got it down to like the 8-10 range, but then they hung there for a while. It's like, okay, well, this is going to be what it is. But Malik Renew, who's had an excellent season for the Hoosiers, he had 26 points and 14 rebounds last night. Trey Galloway, who's had a really, really good year for them as well, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. The Bloomington kid from Bloomington High School South, Anthony Leal, he scored 6 points, including what ended up being the game-winning 3 to put them up 74-73. Crazy ending. Like, they get a steal. Khalil Ware has a breakaway layup. Like, looked like a baby giraffe, almost like he was just kind of lumbering. Like, his footwork got all messed up. He almost hurt himself. It looked like he tore his Achilles. I think he's fine, but like, just messed up his footwork, blows a wide open layup. And luckily they end up getting fouled in the offensive rebound, make 2 free throws. But like, that could have been incredibly costly. And it just was a completely blown wide open layup. But credit to the Hoosiers. They needed that win. Like, if you're going to be a top half Big Ten team, which is what they're fighting for, you have to beat those bottom quarter teams on the road. And they didn't look like they were going to do that, but they did that last night. The Hoosiers are now 6-6. But Chris Holtmann and the Buckeyes, that is 5 straight losses. That is 8 of 9 now, and they're 3-9 in the Big Ten. Not going well in Columbus for Chris Holtmann. Some of those Mountain West results that I wanted to touch on quickly. You had Colorado State taking down Boise State 75-62. Nevada took care of top 25 Utah State 77-63 in convincing fashion. Coach Alford's team's not going anywhere. What else do we got there? New Mexico goes on the road and beats Wyoming and Laramie 91-73. This league, we talk about it a lot. It deserves to be talked about a lot. It is a very good league. It's a very, very good mid-major league. It's fun to follow because the teams are good. The teams are exciting. You have kind of some national brand with Richard Pitino being in the league, with Steve Alford being in the league. San Diego State was a Final Four team a year ago. So there's even some things that like people know nationally about this conference. And then the race has been excellent. Now, I've continued to pour a little bit of cold water on the love of the Mountain West. To me, it's one of those things that like it gets you retweeted on Twitter when you talk about the Mountain West being a 5 or 6 bid league. It makes it seem like you're the college basketball guy when you're telling your friends, hey, like, you guys watch the Mountain West? Isn't the Mountain West really fun? And like, everybody's like, oh, I don't really know about the Mountain West. Then you kind of sound like the smart guy. It's a really good league. I don't, in my opinion, it shouldn't be the 5 or 6 bid league that we're making it out to be. I think that we're starting to see it cannibalize itself a little bit. And that's going to actually almost might be helping them because they're all getting quad one wins against each other and all this stuff. And it's like, maybe they should be rated a little lower. I don't know. I mean, I don't have all the answers, but right now you have 4 teams sitting on top at 7-3, which makes this race, like I said, regardless of what you think of the league, like the race is awesome. New Mexico, San Diego State, Utah State, Boise State, all 7-3 now coming out of last night. Colorado State, Nevada, and UNLV all have 4 losses. So you have 7 teams within 1 game of each other there in the Mountain West. How many of these teams will make the NCAA tournament? I have no idea. Probably should be 3 or 4, in my opinion, instead of 5 or 6. We'll see how it plays out. But that's your little Mountain West update here on All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. Let's circle back around to home base of the Southeastern Conference now. We're going to wrap things up with Kentucky, but first, South Carolina. Coach Lamont Paris, National Coach of the Year. Go ahead and send him the award. He deserves it. They looked like world beaters there for a while. They got up 17 points, I believe, at one point early in the second half. 53-36, this says, was their largest lead. Ole Miss, I forget. I think it got to 2 or 3 minutes. Well, obviously got to 3. It ended at 3. I don't know if it got closer than that during live action, but excellent comeback for them. Alan Flanagan had a huge game for the Rebels, 26 points. You had Jamarian Sharp doing his thing around the basket. He had a possession with a couple blocks in a row. Impressive stuff for him. But South Carolina just keeps on winning. They're 20-3, 8-2 in the Southeastern Conference. They've won 6 straight in the SEC. Like, I mean, the wins just keep coming, and they get to play Vanderbilt at home on Saturday. So pretty darn good chance they'll have another win, be 9-2. I think I said this last night, they give me a little bit, though I think they're better than this, but the vibes are a little bit like Texas A&M last year, where they just kept winning basketball games, and then you're finally like, oh crap, like this team's 15-3 in the SEC. Like, we're towards that now with this South Carolina team. Like, they just keep stacking wins. They're going to keep winning games because I think they're better than that Texas A&M team from a year ago. But you have to give credit to the Gamecocks. They just keep winning. They're doing something in impressive fashion. They're beating good teams. And here they are, 20-3, 8-2, with a legitimate chance to compete for an SEC championship. Before we get into tonight's card, let's talk a little bit about Kentucky. Obviously, I'm a Kentucky fan, right, for KentuckySportsRadio.com, all that good stuff. 109-73 last night in Nashville. 109-77, excuse me. I think I said 73 there. Now, if you follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR, you would know that I triggered Big Orange and Tennessee fans last night. Genuinely, like that. There are admittedly times now I pride myself. I almost never, not going to say never, but almost never tweet something for effect. I don't care about that. I'm not a hot take guy. I don't care about that. I'm not going to say something just to get a certain effect from people. But there are admittedly times where I have something that I truly believe in and I tweet it and I'm like, this is gonna get some response. Last night was not one of those times. I tweeted something to the effect. It's actually from a conversation with my dad, and it made me look this up and then subsequently tweet it, where I said Alabama went to Vanderbilt. Let's put it this way. Going into last night, Vanderbilt had played 4 SEC home games. In those 4 SEC home games, they lost to Alabama by 3 points. They lost to Auburn by 15 points. They lost to Tennessee by 13 points, and they beat Missouri. Just stated as fact. Those are things that happened in real life. Those happened in the games on the court at Memorial Gymnasium in Nashville. I literally said comparing results is a fool's errand, but it just gives you some context that all wins should be celebrated. That's essentially what I said. Tennessee fans took exception to that. They reminded me that they beat Kentucky 103-92 on Saturday. They reminded me that Kentucky's defense stinks. They reminded me of some other not so nice things. But it was an interesting evening, and still to this minute, I'm getting tweets rolling in from random Volunteers fans bemoaning the fact that I may dare celebrate a win that the team that I cheer for got last night. And in case there's a Tennessee fan watching this, there probably is, because they've been also on my Twitter today. I'm kind of surprised they're not flooding my comments, just kind of to troll me. But let's get the prefacing out of the way. Vanderbilt's not a very good men's college basketball team. We know that. They have a lot more in common with, I think in the KenPom rankings, they're 201 right now, just one spot ahead of Marshall, 202, who Kentucky scored 118 against earlier this year. They have a lot more in common with Marshall, Penn, Illinois State, New Mexico State than they do any other team in the SEC. The closest SEC team in KenPom is Missouri at 125. So this is a mid-major team masquerading as an SEC team. All that has been said. Kentucky put up 109 points without two starters, when other teams have gone into Memorial Gymnasium. And not necessarily, Alabama struggled to win the game. I'm not going to say that Auburn and Tennessee struggled to win the game, but they certainly didn't embarrass Vanderbilt in the way that Kentucky did. Won by 32 points without two starters, 109 points. That's impressive. They got things done. Rob Dillingham is playing out of his mind right now. Antonio Reeves still having an All-American level season. Last night you get 13 points from Jordan Burks. You get 7. You got 30 combined points, 17 from Justin Edwards, 13 from Jordan Burks. Who in the world would have thought of that? I like what Big Z brought to the 5. I think he gives you a lot of the same things that Trey Mitchell gives you at the 5 in terms of his skill level, but he does it in a 7-foot 2-inch frame. So impressive stuff from him. First game that he's played well since his going off against Georgia hours after he was cleared to play. But a little bit of credit to Kentucky. 6-4 in the SEC. Big one against Gonzaga on Saturday. They need some quality wins. Gonzaga's not, Kentucky's schedule just hasn't done them any favors this year. Miami ended up not being very good. Obviously, Louisville stinks. A couple of teams in the SEC, like Arkansas, is not what you expected. Texas A&M is not necessarily quite what you expected. Gonzaga is not as good as expected. So, a lot of these games that were supposed to be quality opportunities, quality wins or losses, just haven't been that. And that's no fault to anybody. That's the fault of the other team. But it's just been the way things have broke this year. So, but all you can do is win the games on your schedule. And Kentucky has a chance to do that Saturday against the Dogs. Looking at tonight's schedule, the big one to watch, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, ESPN2, Auburn hosting Alabama. The first time around, Auburn lost this game in Tuscaloosa, 79-75. But this is going to really decide some things at the top of the SEC standings. Alabama currently 8-1. Auburn currently 7-2. Alabama can really put themselves in the driver's seat of the conference with a win. Auburn can kind of muddy up the pack at the top with a win tonight. So that's going to be certainly a fun one to watch. Providence hosts Creighton tonight in a Big East matchup. Xavier hosts Villanova. In the Big Ten, you get Northwestern hosting Nebraska, Michigan hosting Wisconsin. Mississippi State hosts Georgia in the SEC tonight as well. So certainly some good games to watch. We will quickly run through some of the picks that I already have in for tonight. But first, we have a question from a faithful listener and my good friend Travis Shoemaker. Does UNC Asheville, only Travis would come up with a question like this. Does UNC Asheville give High Point their first and maybe only conference loss? Well, High Point, coached by my friend Alan Huss, longtime Creighton assistant, now getting his chance as a head coach there of the Panthers in High Point, North Carolina. They are having an outstanding season. They are 20-4 overall, one of the longest winning streaks in all of college basketball. Actually, the longest winning streak in college basketball right now at 12 wins. They are 9-0 in the Big South. UNC Asheville is 7-2. So, I mean, as Travis alludes to, probably the other best team in the Big South. They are at home in this one tonight. High Point is really, really good offensively. Kamani Hamilton, Kezagifa, all these guys can really, really go. Duke Miles, these guys are really good players. I think that they match up pretty well, honestly, with UNC Asheville. UNC Asheville, KenPom adjusted defense, 212. High Point's like 30th offensively. So it's hard to imagine that High Point can't go on the road and score points in this one. Now, can they get any stops? That's certainly the question with this team. They're like 290 in KenPom adjusted defensive efficiency. Pace is probably going to be pretty high to this one, which I think lends itself to High Point still going on the road and winning. So to answer your question, no, I think High Point honestly has a good chance to run the table in the Big South this year. And they're going to be a team. I mean, yeah, the Big South's not very good. So you're still probably talking like even if High Point's sitting there at 28-5 at the end of the year, still probably talking about a 14 seed at best, probably a 15 seed. But like it's a team that could score 85 on somebody and upset a 2 seed. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's at least possible. So let's take a look at some of the games that I had circled, or some of the plays, I guess I should say, that I have circled already for this evening. I went ahead and locked in Syracuse minus 8.5 against Louisville. This is one, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on this show, but pretty much the way that I've gone about my gambling picks this year, I'm having a very good season. I think at 194 and 144 now overall, which is a little over 57%. So not like I'm not going to be flown out to Vegas to host my own show anytime soon, but that's a winning proposition, which most people can't do, especially on that. To be 57% on my volume of plays is pretty darn good. I will pat myself on the back and say that. But one of the ways I've had some success this year is that I scroll through the games. I see what my brain likes without really consulting anything. What stands out to me. Then I'll consult KenPom. If we agree on the same side, automatic play. Agree by a couple points. Like I'm looking for advantage here. This is one where there was clear advantage. I thought Syracuse minus 8.5 stood out. Orangeman coming off of, or I always say Orangeman, the Orange, coming off of 2 straight losses. They're back home at the Carrier Dome. Louisville, obviously not very good, but they are actually coming off of a win, but I don't put much into that. Syracuse minus 8.5. Go to KenPom. It says 12. I like that as well. I think this is a double-digit win for Syracuse. I got the under 133.5 in Illinois State and UIC. Illinois State, coached by another friend of mine, Ryan Peden, Andrew Dockage on that staff as well. Another one, consulted KenPom. They agreed. They had it at 129, 66-63 in Illinois State's advantage. 2 slow tempo teams, 2 teams that are near the bottom in KenPom's adjusted offensive efficiency, but aren't terrible defensively. So I think both of these teams are going to, that they struggle to score against anybody. They'll struggle to score against the other team's decent defense, and the pace is going to be pretty low. So I think this is definitely in the 60s. Don't be surprised if it's like 61-55 or something like that. And you even have a little bit of wiggle room there. Had the under last night in that Maryland Rutgers game, which like didn't even get close. I like Providence plus 2.5 tonight, hosting Creighton. Again, there's some spot aspect to this as well. Providence coming back home after 2 losses on the road to Connecticut and Villanova. They really need a win. Creighton coming off of a home loss, but it's hard to go into Providence and win. I'm not a huge fan of this Creighton team. I love their big 3, and then I just don't know. So I'm going to take the points there. Providence plus 2.5. Lastly, Northwestern Nebraska over 142.5. This is something I don't do very often. But I want to kind of take because a lot of people, and we're actually going kind of long today, so I'm going to start to try to wrap this up. But a lot of people always like betting overs, want to root for points. I've never understood that. Like, I like rooting for bets that win. That's what I like doing. Honestly, there's weird psychology to this, but like I've always said, I would rather bet an under because then you're winning until you lose, as opposed to losing until you win by betting an over. Just the way my brain works, I guess. I actually enjoy betting unders. I really enjoy betting unders way more than I enjoy betting overs. But I think the um, Northwestern Nebraska over hits. It's 142.5. Ken Palm has it at 147. But the chance of getting Keisei Tominaga and Boo Booey and betting an over, yeah, I like the idea of that. Those two guards are so fun to watch. They're so good offensively. I'm going to take the over and hope those guys help me get there. So that's at least for right now. I'll tweet it out at BRamseyKSR. Probably in a couple hours, I'll tweet out the official betting card. But for right now, exclusive here for All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey watchers, we get over 142.5 Northwestern Nebraska, Providence plus the 2.5, the under 133.5 in Illinois State UIC, and Syracuse minus 8.5. So there we have it for today's episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. Thanks to those who watched live today. Thanks to those who jumped into the chat. That is what this show is all about. If you're watching in the future, sometime later this evening or tomorrow or anytime, you can certainly leave a comment. That really helps out the channel. Please like the video as well. You can ask me a question on Twitter at BRamseyKSR, and I'll be sure to get back with you. Make sure you subscribe to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show here on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast feed as well on Spotify or wherever you do listen to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show for new episodes every Monday and Friday. And as always, follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Enjoy tonight and the rest of the week of college basketball.